The United States, home to the world's most formidable military force, is grappling with a big crisis. It is struggling to fill its ranks. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth is this even possible? Well, the US Army is struggling to find recruits, and there are many reasons at play here, and the biggest one is enough to make you do a double take. The American youth is just not interested. Last year, the US Army faced a shortage of 15,000 soldiers. Fast forward to this year, and while things have improved somewhat, there's still a considerable deficit of around 10,000 troops. You might wonder, what's preventing the Army from meeting its recruitment targets? Well, there are two significant factors. Firstly, the Army is on the hunt for talent in an economy that's enticing the youth with better job offers and benefits. A fair reason to ditch the battlefield. Secondly, the pandemic kept recruiters away from high schools, which traditionally serve as prime locations for future soldiers. Third, they say there is a fall in patriotism, love for the country among the Gen Z. There is a feeling of apathy among young people, a feeling of why should I defend a government that doesn't appreciate me? Military analysts say that the younger generation lacks the kind of life experience or formative life events that had inspired earlier generations to serve. Remember, many of the young people in America, especially those born after the 9/11 attack, don't have the same kind of motivation to serve in the military that the earlier generation had. It's either that or just simple pessimism. Those who want to serve are also getting disqualified, rejected on the basis of their physical and mental health. More than 56% of 18 to 25-year-olds are overweight or obese. According to the Johns Hopkins researchers, this means that they can't enlist. According to Western media reports, much of the military will fall short of its recruitment goal this year. It could be 25% short. Not just the Army, the Navy, the Air Force and the Coast Guard are all expected to fall short of their recruitment goal. And as they struggle to attract young people, the military is scrambling for solutions. Several branches recently increased recruitment payouts, long used to attract people with special skills, and widened their availability. Bonuses have been hiked. Some recruitments have been loosened, including prohibitions on hand and neck tattoos and past marijuana use. It's no secret that today's young generation has a different perspective on life, career, and purpose. They're more inclined towards technology, entrepreneurship, and making their mark in the world. So as the American military grapples with this crisis, maybe militaries around the world can take note and make itself a dynamic force for the future. After all, a nation's strength lies not just in its weapons, but in the hearts and minds of the generation that will shape its destiny. Our cover story tonight is from what is now becoming the most dangerous stretch of water in the world, the Yellow Sea. The semi-enclosed body of water is located between mainland China and the Korean Peninsula. If the wars of men and nations were not enough, even this region is becoming into a new theater of conflict. China wants absolute control of the Yellow Sea. It wants to deploy its contingents there, station its warships, control shipping routes, and dictate trade rules. It monitors all warships that pass through it. This is mostly because of Taiwan, a territory which China claims to own. Among China's defense or offense mechanism is also an underwater trap. This underwater trap is used to block submarines. Too bad that these tactics now seem to be backfiring. On the 21st of August, China got caught in its own trap. Look at this report now. At least 55 Chinese sailors are feared dead after their submarine got entangled in a trap which China had laid for its enemies. It has ended up ensnaring its own people. The report states that a Chinese PLA submarine struck a chain and anchor obstacle that was placed for Western vessels. The collision caused system failure. The submarine's oxygen ran out, its batteries depleted. The crew got poisoned. A total of 55 Chinese officials allegedly died. This includes 22 officers, 7 officer cadets, 9 petty officers, and 17 sailors. And the cause of all their deaths is believed to be hypoxia. The source of this information is British intelligence. China naturally has denied the whole story. But there is credible evidence that this is precisely what happened. And if it did happen, then this is a huge embarrassment for China. A bitter reminder of how its muscle flexing can boomerang. For the last 6 years, China has tried to convert this region into its playground. It has bullied foreign fishing vessels, rammed into ships that it perceives to be a threat, and tried to alter the routes of any ships passing through. Not just in the Yellow Sea, but also beyond. Take the South China Sea, for instance. It begins where the Yellow Sea ends. China has been bullying the Philippines here. Let me explain. 2 weeks back, it installed an underwater barrier to hinder the movement of Filipino vessels. This barrier was a floating cordon of sorts. It was placed near the Scarborough Shoal. The Philippines removed this barrier. It even released a video of its divers doing so. It seems this decision hasn't gone down too well with China. 24 hours back, a Filipino fishing boat collided with a foreign vessel. The collision led to the deaths of 3 fishermen and other 8 crew members who also suffered injuries. Guess where this accident happened? Near the Scarborough Shoal, the same area where Beijing laid its underwater barrier. Was this collision an act of revenge by Beijing? It certainly seems so. However, the identity of the vessel remains unknown. So the authorities are not naming China just yet. They're trying to investigate who owned it. But the thing is, China's track record speaks for itself. You see, it has a history of ramming its fishing vessels into smaller boats. A history of bullying boats that pass through its self-claimed regions on land and on sea. Let's talk about the Scarborough Shoal, a small but a strategic reef and fishing ground. It has been a major source of tension between Manila and Beijing. But what exactly is it? Well, the Scarborough Shoal is essentially a rock, located atop an atoll or a ring-shaped island. It is a disputed territory claimed both by China and the Philippines. Every time a Filipino vessel passes through here, there's a fat chance that it gets rammed by a Chinese ship. This has been the status quo for several years now, but now China's trying to up the ante. It has increased its overtures and acts of foul play. And every time it is questioned about this, it blames the United States. Listen to this.
The South China Sea was in peace until the US came to disrupt it. The US provision of 2 outdated patrol boats to the Philippines, which are not of much practical use, exposes its actual role as a disruptor and saboteur of peace and stability in the South China Sea. We urge the US to stop meddling in the South China Sea issue and stop undermining peace and stability in the region.
You heard that. We urge the US to stop undermining stability in the region, says a country that has undermined peace and stability almost everywhere. You see, the Yellow Sea and the South China Sea are just 2 pieces of this puzzle. China's bullying tactics spread across the length and breadth of the Indo-Pacific region. Now, as I speak, China also has ongoing territorial or economic disputes with countries like South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, Brunei, Laos, and Mongolia. If we speak of Japan, China's fighting it over the Senkaku Islands. They are located in the East China Sea. No one stays here. Japan calls these islands Senkaku. China's named them Diaoyu. If we speak of Indonesia, the fight there is over the Natuna Islands. China has been accused of using intimidating island patrol tactics. Also accused of fishing illegally in waters claimed by Indonesia. China also claims parts of Vietnam, especially the Paracel Islands. In 2020, the Chinese army sank a Vietnamese fishing vessel near the Paracel Islands. The tactic was the same. A Chinese vessel went and rammed the Vietnamese boat. Next, we have Brunei and Malaysia. These countries share the South China Sea, but China wants the sea all to itself. Beijing has developed military bases on islands and created artificial islands. Time and again, it also deploys maritime militia to bully the 2 nations. Where is China going to stop? How many more countries is it going to fight? How many more disputes is it going to ignite? It's perhaps time that all these countries come together to call out China's aggression. On this show, we will certainly continue to do so. Is Paris a city of love or a city of bugs? Let's talk about the bedbug crisis in France. We broke the news to you and warned you about the bug endemic a month before. Earlier, the problem was only isolated to Paris. But now the whole country is battling bugs. From cinemas to airports, the blood-sucking pests have wreaked havoc on citizens. The government is finally taking a step and has announced emergency measures. It will look into the surging bedbug cases. Will the bedbugs compromise the 2024 Olympics? Will Paris become a city of bedbugs? Let's get you the details now. France is ready to host the Rugby World Cup and the Olympics Games in Paris next year. But what is threatening the major sports events are bedbugs. Experts are concerned about the health and safety implications of this endemic. The pests have spread to various parts of France and have invested public spaces like cinema halls, schools, airports, public transportation. Just take a look at these visuals.
Et il y a beaucoup de mues aussi. Toutes celles qui ne bougent pas bien claires, là, c'est juste des mues. C'est la peau.
Il y a de la surprise.
Stéphanie?
Oui.
Là, hop, une là.
Bedbugs are no joke. They are only spreading and spreading fast. So what is the government doing about it? The French government has called for emergency meetings this week and says that it will establish countermeasures against the pests. Meanwhile, the head of the Renaissance Party, Sylvain Malade, says that a cross-party bill will be proposed to combat the scourge of bedbugs. But is it too late? Should the government have acted faster? French officials say that the country is in need of a national prevention plan, an emergency fund, and new public disinfestation services. You see, the government should have been better prepared, as France is no stranger to the blood-sucking pests. Bedbugs have made a resurgence in recent years, and reports say that 1 in 10 flat dwellers have been troubled by bedbugs in the last 5 years. Experts perceive the issue as a question of public health. You see, bedbugs are parasitic insects that feed on the blood of humans. Although they don't spread diseases, a bedbug's bite can cause skin irritation, allergies, itching, and sleep deprivation. Why do I say sleep deprivation? It's because they primarily infest where humans rest, like mattress seams, bed frames, cracks, curves, or behind the wallpaper. The bad news is, right now we're talking about France, but soon these bugs could spread to other countries. How? The answer lies in the way the bed bugs spread. The pests can easily ride on luggage, purses, backpacks, or any other item which was placed on an infested surface. Imagine your aunt who is on holiday in France bringing back bed bugs as souvenirs. Now Paris is set to host the Olympic Games next year, and the nation needs to save its image and sanitation issues before the athletes arrive. Will Paris be able to host the Olympic Games? Will the bug crisis prove to be a health hazard for tourists? How long will the government take to implement strong action? We will have to wait and watch. Who killed John Fitzgerald Kennedy? 6 decades on, people still have their doubts. The Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated the late American president, that there was only one killer. But new revelations refute this. They indicate that there was in fact a second killer. A Secret Service agent who witnessed JFK's assassination has now come out and relayed his version of the story. But before we get to that, let's recall what happened in the public eye. What horror unfolded before the people of Dallas on November 22nd back in 1963. JFK and his wife Jackie sat in a black Lincoln Continental. Their motorcade was led by 2 open-top limousines. It was proceeding at a stately pace through a street lined with people. The president and the first lady were waving at onlookers. The motorcade was heading towards what was known locally as a triple underpass. Suddenly, JFK was seen clutching his throat. Jackie leant over to attend to him. An instant later, it looked like a lightning bolt struck JFK's head. It was blown up and thrown back. Jackie frantically crawled over the rear seat of the open car and climbed onto its rear deck. She was grasping at something. It was later described as a piece of her husband's shattered skull. Such a harrowing moment. People saw it with their own eyes. In fact, at least 4 people caught it on camera. The most vivid version is that captured by a dressmaker named Abraham Zapruder. A lot of people watched it, but the full version wasn't out until 12 years later. The exact moment in which the bullet strikes Kennedy's head was kept hidden for more than a decade. Why? because it was too gory to handle. Now you can watch it on YouTube. In the clip, it seemed that the blast came from in front of JFK and blew his head backwards. But it was dismissed as an optical illusion. The Warren Commission concluded that JFK's assassin, Oswald, was positioned behind him. It said that Kennedy was hit from behind. He slammed his chin forward to his chest and then his head rebounded backwards. But what if? What if there was a possibility that the shot did come from the front? Oswald was standing at the back. He fired shots from a 6th-floor window in the Texas School Book Depository. But was there another gunman positioned in the front of Kennedy? Well, ex-Secret Service agent Paul Landis believes there was. Where exactly, he's not sure. On the day of Kennedy's assassination, a 28-year-old Landis was assigned to protect the First Lady. He was riding on the running board of a black Cadillac behind the presidential limousine. That is when a shot rang out. He soon heard a second one and saw the president's head split open. This he had spoken about earlier, but what I'm about to tell you now are the revelations that he has made after 50 years of silence. On the day of Kennedy's assassination, Landis spotted an intact bullet in the back of the presidential limousine. On finding the bullet, he reportedly pocketed it. He didn't want it to fall into the hands of souvenir hunters or the press. Landis accompanied First Lady Jackie Kennedy into the Dallas hospital as surgeons fruitlessly tried to save her husband's life. Landis found himself next to the president's stretcher. At the end, only one bullet was found, that too on Governor John B. Connolly's stretcher, who was also injured in the incident. Now, the Warren Commission's theory says that Kennedy and the governor were hit by the same bullet, that one of the bullets fired that day entered Kennedy's body from behind, then exited through his throat before striking Governor Connolly. But Landis believes that the bullet he found had only hit Kennedy. If his theory is correct, it could indicate that Connolly was hit by an entirely different bullet, perhaps by one fired by someone besides Lee Harvey Oswald. Initially, the public largely accepted the Warren Commission's version. 87% of Americans polled by Gallup agreed that Oswald shot the former president. But criticism mounted over the next decade or so. It peaked in the late 1970s with the release of the Zapruder film we just told you about. Fast forward to 2017, 61% of adult Americans believe that more than one person was involved in Kennedy's assassination. So, were there two gunmen involved? What do you think? These are all, after all, just conspiracy theories. We can only speculate. The lone gunman theory still remains the accepted conclusion. But I ask again, what do you think? WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.